Good morning. I'm back with Slacker by Gordon Corman. So last chapter, Daphne, the middle school do-gooder, found Cameron at his house playing video games and was insistent on joining the PAG, the Positive Action Group, which Cameron made up and never really intended for it to be a group at all. He didn't want any members in it. Daphne was absolutely certain that she wanted to join the PAG. So now Cameron has to figure out what to do with Daphne thinking she's a member and not wanting to do anything at all. So we're going to start in chapter 5, Mr. Fanshawe. I hadn't been sleeping very well lately. The fall charity raffle was on my mind. We'd only sold 27 tickets, and I'd bought 12 of them. The drawing was less than 2 months away, and we didn't have anywhere near enough money to buy the prize, a 77-inch TV. It was for charity. How could anybody not support charity? But these were middle school kids. Finding out what made them tick was like analyzing soil samples from the surface of Mars. A complete mystery. What they could do on their phones during a few minutes between classes would surpass any technology that existed when I was their age. But sometimes they had the maturity and attention span of newborn bats, sending out their first echo signals and then darting around following them in a pointless, directionless frenzy. They're kids, Dara Wimberly, our assistant principal, told me. What do you expect from them? They're doing exactly what's appropriate at this age. Maybe, I replied, but that's not selling any raffle tickets. I can't afford to buy them all a guidance counselor's salary. And it's not going to look too kosher when I win the grand prize. She just laughed and promised to buy another book of tickets. Maybe I was trying to help me out. Or, more likely, she figured the odds were in her favor because sales were slow. Who didn't want a 77-inch TV? I sighed. It was all probably understandable. These were tough times in Sycamore. With the new mall sucking the economy life out of the town, families were regularly being asked to pony up for some campaign or another. We were running a book fair to support the library. The clubs and the sports teams constantly asked for handouts, and the PTA always had some fundraiser going on. To ask these kids to spend what little spare time they had knocking on doors selling raffle tickets was probably going too far. I understood. I really did. But it wasn't going to look too good if the Salvation Army got stiffed and our school was still at the cost of one 77-inch TV. I had to relax. Lack of sleep was making everything seem worse than it really was. A power nap would make all the difference in the world. 10 minutes was all I needed. I just lay my head down at my desk. Mr. Fanshawe! I snapped up again, the muscles in my neck protesting the sudden motion. Daphne Leibowitz leaned into my office. It would be unkind to say I wasn't glad to see her, but I'd almost been asleep, so I wasn't at my best. And Daphne was one of our regular customers in the guidance department. I wouldn't call her a fuss bucket exactly. She is a nice girl with a big heart. Seeing the world as it could have been was a wonderful quality in a young person. Expecting me to fix it for her, well, that wasn't in my job description. Hi, Daphne. What can I do for you? I joined this new club, she began. Don't get me wrong. It's really great and all that, but, I prompted. With Daphne, there was always a but. They're not doing anything, she exclaimed. The big planning meeting was supposed to be a week ago. Maybe you just had the wrong date and time, I suggested. There was no date and time. They were going to text me. Could they have forgotten? I offered. It was a silly question. Nobody ever forgot Daphne. She had a knack for reminding people. She shook her head. I asked. There was no meeting, and there's no meeting scheduled yet. Honestly, Mr. Fanshawe, this club is the best thing, but they can't get it off the ground. I'll have a word with them, I promised. Which club is it? It's the PAG. I drew a complete blank. The Positive Action Group, Daphne said. I just know I can get them to help Elvis. Helping is the whole point of the group. Elvis? I echoed. Elvis died back in the 70s, Daphne. Not the singer, the beaver. Right, the beaver. Let's just say that this was not the first time the beaver had come up in the conversation with Daphne. I didn't realize the critter had a name. Elvis had eaten all the beautiful white bark off the base of the birch tree in my front yard. It hadn't brought the tree down, but it had weakened it enough to drop a big branch through the windshield of my car. I swiveled towards my computer monitor. I knew every student club, team, group, and organization at Sycamore Middle. Why hadn't I heard of the Positive Action Group? I browsed through the school's website. Sure enough, there it was. Positive Action Group, because helping others is an education in itself. I just sat there, staring at the screen. How could an organization like this spring up right under my very nose? And such a wonderful organization dedicated to helping people. Almost like the Prince of Fuzzy over at the high school, only not as aggressive. Some of those older teenage girls could be very pushy. To be honest, they scared me a little. In my amazement, I completely forgot about Daphne, who was standing right across from me. Are you okay, Mr. Fanshawe? You just went all pale. Yes, I'm fine. And I was really fine. Just the thought that someone had formed the Positive Action Group restored my faith in the youth of Sycamore. I read the mission statement. Well, okay, it was a little short on specifics. No wonder they were having trouble getting it started. No problem. They needed guidance. That's where I came in. Thanks for bringing this to my attention, I told Daphne briskly. Leave it with me. We'll have the Positive Action Group shipshape in no time. And you'll tell them about Elvis? She persisted. I forced a smile. You'll bring up the subject at the first meeting. Satisfied with that, she left my office and I returned to the website. After 13 years as a guidance counselor, I knew enough not to get overly excited by the big plans of a bunch of middle school kids. Their hearts were in the right place, but their ambitions usually exceeded their capabilities. Still, I had a good feeling about the PAG. I was certain they were the kind of organization that would make a difference. I read on. Meet Cameron Boxer, PAG president. Cameron Boxer. Why don't I know that name? According to this, he was an 8th grader, which meant he'd been here more than 2 years. How could a community-minded student leader like this boy escape my notice for so long? I called up his school record. The student card photo that appeared on my screen barely rang a bell. Light brown hair, blue eyes, pleasant looking, but not memorable. I definitely seen him around, but never as anything more than a face in a crowd. In all the time he'd been here, I don't think he'd ever crossed my threshold. It seemed crazy that anyone could go so far along in this middle school career without ever once meeting the guidance counselor. His grades were unremarkable, mostly low B's and an occasional C. And his extracurriculars? I stared. There was nothing. I don't mean nothing special. I mean nothing at all. No clubs, no sports, no drama. If a student volunteered to hand out programs on Parents' Night, it would appear on that list. He didn't do that either. The page was completely blank. I examined the picture of the ambitious 8th grader who had created a group dedicated to community action. If I hadn't known better, I would have sworn that Cameron Boxer was a slacker. It was just more proof that you couldn't judge a book by its cover. I was anxious to meet this fine young man and help him bring his blueprint for the Positive Action Group to fruition. I could see it now. The PAG was going to do a tremendous amount of good for the people of Sycamore, and it seemed like the kind of organization that could sell a lot of rap tickets. The end.